Stories. In a time not so long ago, in the land of the rising sun, the fifth patriarch of Zen was needing to pass his robe and bowl on to another. So he called the head monk into his presence and asked the head monk to write on the monastery wall. And the head monk wrote, "Our body is the Bodhi tree, our mind a mirror bright. We clean it personally every hour to let no dust alight." Not long after, the monk, who had worked in the kitchen for decades, stirring the rice and cleaning the pots, came by and read what was written on the monastery wall. He took the chalk and obliterated what was written and wrote in its place, "There is no Bodhi tree, nor stand of mirror bright, since everything is emptiness. Where can the dust alight?" Can we close our eyes just for a moment as we make the transition from one story to another? Lao Tze was a Taoist. He came under the tutelage of the great Lao Tze, the one who wrote the I-Ching. But before arriving into the presence of Lao Tze, he spent some time with the old Taoist master called Old Chang. Now one day, Lao Tze, having a mind which liked to learn, was curious, came to Master Old Chang and said, "I have learned of a great sorcerer who lives in the mountain nearby. And it is spoken of him that when he comes down into town, wearing the hides of the animals that reside in the forests above the village, the skulls of the animals rattling around his waist, amulets of their bones around his neck. And it is said, when he fixes his gaze on anyone who dares in the village, he cries to them, 'Do you want to know when you're going to die? Do you want a spell cast?' And people would turn away, hide their children under their skirts. He was a fearful personage. But Lao Tze said to Old Chang, 'May I go to him?' And Old Chang said, 'Go, go.' So Lao Tze made his way up the mountain to the hut where the sorcerer lived. He could smell the aroma of the herbs burning in the hearth of that hut. And when he came to the door, all he could see was swirling smoke. But then, there he was, the animal skins on his back, rattling skulls around his waist, the bones of the animals dangling from his neck, and fixing Li Tzu with a gaze which would melt the ice on the glaciers. He asked Li Tzu, "What do you want? Do you want to know when you're going to die? Do you want a spell cast?" And Li Tzu replied that he had been with a Taoist master for some years and had no fear of death. But the sorcerer sat Li Tzu down and began to dance around his fire, throwing dust which brought up clouds of all colors swirling around. And in between, he'd shout, making the sounds of this animal, or that animal, or this bird, or that bird. The day passed. The same cycle going on, the dancing, the calls. But then suddenly, the sorcerer came close to Li Tzu's face, and he made the roaring sound of a mountain lion. And Li Tzu's heart started to beat faster. The one thing in his life he feared were mountain lions. He'd been a shepherd many years before, and a mountain lion had come amongst his sheep. At that moment, just as the sun was going down, the sound piercing into him, he jumped up and ran down the mountain, coming back into the presence of Li Tzu, coming back into the presence of his master, Old Chang. He said, "Master, there is no doubt that you are a great Taoist, but I have found someone more powerful than you." Old Chang just laughed, and he said, "Bring him to me." So the next day, Li Tzu went up the mountain, requesting the sorcerer to come down into the presence of his master. When he did, and they came to the door of Old Chang's hut, Old Chang would not allow Li Tzu to enter, merely inviting the sorcerer in. After some time, the sorcerer emerged. Li Tzu asked him, "What happened? What happened?" The sorcerer said, "Your master is going to die. He has little life force left in him. I cannot help him." And then he left. But Li Tzu was totally overwhelmed. He went into Old Chang. He said, I'm so sorry." Li Tzu begged, "I did not know. Old Chang gave him a great slap and said, "You foolish man, you have learned the way of the Tao, but you have not experienced its essence. Bring the sorcerer to me once again." So the next day, Li Tzu went and invited the sorcerer to come down again. But before this, he was told that when the sorcerer was in Old Chang's presence, that Old Chang had withdrawn his life force, brought his chi within. And this was why to the sorcerer, it appeared that he was dying. So the sorcerer came again, and again Lao Tze was left outside. And after some time, when the sorcerer emerged, he said, "His life force is returning. I've healed him. You owe me 2 chickens." And then he left. And when Lao Tze went into the presence of Old Chang told him that he had released his life force to flow once again. So it appeared to the sorcerer that he had been healed. But then Old Chang said, "Bring him to me once again." So again he went to ask the sorcerer to come back into the presence of his master, but the sorcerer was reluctant to do so. But after some coercion, he did come down once again into the presence of Old Chang, leaving Lao Tze outside. But after a short while, the sorcerer came out, and Lao Tze asked him, "What happened? What happened?" And the sorcerer said, "Your master is very strange. I can't read him." And then, somewhat peremptorily, he left to go to his mountain once again. When Lao Tze went into Old Chang and asked Old Chang what had happened, he was told, "Today I brought existence and non-existence into balance, and as they cancelled each other out, he was not able to read me." Old Chang said, "Bring him to me one more time." This time, Lao Tze had to beg the sorcerer to come. But with reluctance, he came down the mountain once again, the skulls around his neck rattling, as did the amulets around his neck, bearing the smell of the herbs that had been burned perpetually in his hearth. After some time, in the presence of Old Chang, suddenly the door burst open and the sorcerer came dashing out. Lao Tze tried to follow him. What happened? What happened? But the sorcerer was gone. Lao Tze went into Old Chang and asked him, "What happened, Master? What happened?" And Old Chang said, "I went to that place where there is only darkness, the void, the great emptiness." And he was afraid we will never see him in these parts again. Lao Tze realized the essence of Tao. He left Old Chang and returned to his home, where for some while he tilled the fields. He took care of the animals. He grew the corn that feeds life. into the presence of the great Taoist master, Lao Tze. Remembering, it has been suggested that every character, every symbol, and every archetype in every story is an aspect of our self. What are the representations of the elements of this story for us? The sorcerer, Lao Tze, Old Chang. Perhaps, as we ponder on this, we will have our toe in that place where it is necessary for existence and non-existence, darkness and light, to come together, to cancel one another out, so that we can experience what it is that is there. It is suggested to you that all of life and its realities arise out of the power of light, but that all the powers and laws of existence work for emptiness.